A young woman just 16 years old sat before a council of the most learned theologians, jurists, and mathematicians of her time. They were Mexico's foremost intellects, summoned by the Viceroy to test the girl's knowledge. Each grueling question was posed, from complex equations to the most profound philosophical dilemmas. Yet, Juana Ramírez de Asbaje, her real name, successfully overcame every challenge. Eyewitnesses later likened the scene to a royal galleon fighting against a few canoes, a powerful metaphor for her extraordinary talent. So who was this extraordinary woman, and why was such a genius branded history's worst nun? Let's find out. Let's rewind to the mid-17th century, in a Spanish colony, Mexico. This was a society with a complex caste system, where racial and social distinctions permeated every aspect of life. Juana was born out of wedlock. Her father, a Spanish army captain, abandoned her mother, Doña Isabel, a strong and resourceful Spanish Creole woman. According to popular belief, being born out of wedlock was often considered a stain. However, the poet and essayist Octavio Paz argued that new Spanish society at the time was quite tolerant of such relationships and children born outside of marriage. Despite being illiterate, Doña Isabel successfully managed one of her father's two estates, becoming an example of resilience and independence for Juana. More importantly, Juana's grandfather, Pedro, a book lover, owned a private library that she could access from an early age. This very library, a rare treasure trove of knowledge, profoundly shaped Juana's passion for learning. From a very young age, Juana's intelligence was strikingly evident. At just 3 years old, she secretly followed her older sister to school to learn to read. She lied to the teacher, claiming her mother had also sent her to study. And with persistence, she became proficient in reading and writing before her mother even found out. A little older, realizing that higher education was only for males, this 6 or 7-year-old pleaded with her mother to disguise herself as a boy to attend school. Her request was denied, and Juana turned to her grandfather's library for self-study. Juana's self-education wasn't limited to just reading books. She trained herself with extreme discipline, even punishing herself by cutting her hair if she failed to meet her learning goals, believing that a head empty of knowledge should not be adorned with hair. For her, knowledge was more precious than physical beauty. Juana considered this burning desire to learn a natural impulse that God placed in me. This determination and steadfastness reveal that Juana was not only a genius but also a rebellious individual who defied societal prejudices. Just imagine if Juana had been allowed to disguise herself as a boy and attend university. How might her life and the history of female education, especially in the Americas, have changed? This is an open question, prompting us to reflect on the missed opportunities in history. Juana's precocious intellect quickly captured the attention of the Mexico City court. At 16, she was welcomed by the Viceroy and his wife as a lady-in-waiting. There, her plays and poetry captivated and shocked the entire court. It said she learned Latin in just 20 lessons, another testament to her extraordinary learning ability. Juana quickly became a close friend of the Viceroy Leonor Carreto, who sponsored and protected her. Despite being admired and receiving numerous marriage proposals from powerful gentlemen, Juana made it clear that she was more interested in knowledge than matrimony. This was a remarkable contrast in a society where women's roles were almost exclusively confined to marriage and family. In 1667, at the age of 19, Juana made a decision that astonished many. She entered the San Jose convent of the Discalced Carmelites. Why would a woman with such talent and wide-open opportunities at court choose the path of a nun? The popular view suggests that in the patriarchal society of the time, the church was the only place she could find knowledge, maintain her independence, and be respected without needing to marry. Juana herself explained that she entered the convent due to her absolute rejection of marriage, and believed that convent life would have no mandatory occupation that would hinder my freedom to study, nor communal rumors that would prevent the quiet peace of my books. She desired stability to pursue her learning and writing. This was a calculated and strategic choice by a female intellectual determined to survive and thrive in a restrictive world. However, other perspectives suggest that disappointment in love or romantic relationships might have influenced her decision. Some scholars believe it's impossible to write such fervent love sonnets without real-life experience. But whatever the reason, Juana's passion for books and knowledge undoubtedly surpassed all other desires. The irony is that the reality of convent life, especially the strict rules of the Carmelites, hindered her studies and affected her health. She had to leave the Carmelite order and return to court for a time. But then, in 1669, at the age of 20, she joined the Hieronymite order, taking the name Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, the name we know today. Would this decision bring her the intellectual peace she craved, or lead to even greater conflicts? Let's discover in the next chapter. After joining the Hieronymite convent, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz's life was far from isolated, as many might mistakenly believe. Instead of a small cell, she lived in a comfortable two-story apartment, often with servants and even an enslaved person. This allowed her sufficient freedom to study, write, and receive visitors. For many years, Sor Juana was considered a treasure of both the church and the court. She wrote plays, comedies, essays on philosophy, mathematics, music, and religious poetry. She owned a colossal library with over 4,000 books, likely the largest in Latin America at the time, and frequently hosted distinguished scholars for intellectual discussions. She maintained good relations with the court, especially with Viceroy Maria Luisa, who became her patron and published the first volume of her works in Madrid, helping her gain fame throughout the Spanish literary world. The relationship between these two women was so profound that Sor Juana dedicated passionate love poems to the Viceroy, sparking debates about the nature of the love she expressed. Her prominent works include lyrical poetry, both religious and secular, villancicos, Christmas carols, and plays such as House of Desires, reflecting her feminist views, and The Divine Narcissus. With her extraordinary talent, she was hailed as the 10th Muse or the Phoenix of Mexico. Despite being admired, Sor Juana's outspokenness and progressive thinking eventually led to conflicts with her patrons and the church. Her famous poem, Foolish Men, Hombres Necios, is a prime example. In this work, Sor Juana openly criticized gender double standards, accusing men of corrupting women yet blaming them for immorality. She declared in the very first stanza, "Foolish men who accuse women without reason, not seeing that you are the cause and of that which you blame." This poem is considered one of the earliest defenses of women in the Americas. It still holds profound meaning today, reflecting issues of gender inequality in modern society. This was a pivotal moment, showing that Sor Juana did not hesitate to speak out against injustice. The biggest turning point in Sor Juana's life occurred in 1690. The Bishop of Puebla, Manuel Fernández de Santa Cruz, published a private critique by Sor Juana of a sermon by the renowned Jesuit theologian Antonio Vieira without her permission. The bishop changed the title to the Athenagoric Letter, evoking Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and signed it under the pseudonym Sor Filotea de la Cruz. This was accompanied by a highly critical prologue, advising Sor Juana to focus on her religious duties rather than secular knowledge. This was not merely a theological debate, but also part of a power struggle among high-ranking church figures. The Bishop of Puebla aimed to undermine the Archbishop of Mexico, Francisco de Aguiar y Cejas, who admired Vieira. Sor Juana's critique was truly shocking. She defended 3 church fathers and refuted Vieira, arguing that God's greatest subtlety was not the commandment of love, but the gift of free will, allowing humans to determine their own destiny. She even boldly declared that God's greatest kindness was not to bestow benefits upon the ungrateful. A woman publicly refuting a renowned theologian like Vieira and having it widely published ignited outrage among conservative factions within the church, who seized the opportunity to criticize Sor Juana. Her former confessor, Núñez de Miranda, also added to the pressure. To defend her intellectual freedom, Sor Juana responded with her Response to Sor Filotea de la Cruz in March 1691. This work is considered an autobiography and the first feminist manifesto of the Americas. She justified that the humanities and arts were stepping stones leading to sacred theology. Sor Juana humorously and bitterly described the difficulties of pursuing knowledge in the convent, where she lacked solitude and was constantly interrupted. "I am reading, and they feel like playing and singing in the next room. I am studying and 2 servants are fighting, and I come to arbitrate their quarrel." Even when forbidden to read for 3 months, she steadfastly continued to learn from all that God created, serving me as letters, and that whole universal machine as a book. She even wrote the Carol to Saint Catherine, with satirical lines about women only being expected to know how to sew and spin. This response highlighted Sor Juana's courage, logic, and unyielding spirit, presenting a model of a resilient woman who transcended societal prejudices to pursue knowledge. She was not just an intellectual, but a warrior for equality, laying the foundation for the feminist movement in the Americas. Despite her initial resilience, changing historical circumstances exerted immense pressure on Sor Juana. 1692 saw harsh economic hardships, droughts, and famine ravaging Mexico. A riot in Mexico City further empowered Archbishop Aguirre Sejas, who banned plays, creating further disadvantage for Sor Juana. Her powerful patron in Spain also died. All protection seemed to vanish. In early 1693, Sor Juana sought out her former confessor, Núñez de Miranda, who had once criticized her, and within just a few months, she underwent a radical transformation. Her subsequent actions were shocking. Sor Juana sold her entire colossal library, donating the money to the poor. She disciplined her body through self-mortification and renounced her greatest gift, her words. One of her last works was written in her own blood, abandoning pen and ink. There are many theories regarding the cause of this mysterious transformation. The most popular view suggests that the Church succeeded in silencing the extraordinary woman who had challenged their authority. This is seen as a severe psychological and intellectual crisis. However, another perspective posits that there was no conspiracy, but rather a mystical turn towards profound piety, a return to genuine faith. Still others believe that the reprimand from the Bishop of Puebla itself was the catalyst. But if she truly wanted to give up everything, why did she write such a powerful and defiant response just before? The exact reason for this mysterious transformation remains an enigma, as she left no clear explanation. This is an open question, leaving us much to ponder about the complexity of the human soul and the pressures of the era. After renouncing her academic pursuits, Sor Juana dedicated herself to charity work and caring for the sick. She displayed great altruism and profound sacrifice. In 1695, a terrible epidemic, possibly plague, broke out in the convent. Sor Juana fearlessly and devotedly cared for other ailing nuns. However, in doing so, she herself contracted the illness and died in her cell on April 17, 1695, at the age of 46. Months before her death, she wrote a final line in her own blood, a bloody testament no one could forget. "I, the worst in the world, Juana Inés de la Cruz." This was a peak moment of emotion and tragedy, a haunting confession, an agonizing end to the turbulent life of a genius. Despite bearing a tragic nickname, today Sor Juana is recognized as the first feminist of the Americas. She is the subject of countless documentaries, novels, operas, and her image proudly appears on Mexico's 200 peso bill, a national symbol. As Nobel laureate Octavio Paz stated, "It is not enough to say that Sor Juana's work is a product of history. We must add that history is also a product of her work." This quote emphasizes Sor Juana's enormous and timeless influence. So was she truly history's worst nun? Impossible. Most scholars and the public agree that she was the greatest writer of New Spain, regardless of gender. The name worst was not a condemnation, but perhaps a way of expressing humility. The torment of a great soul torn between the thirst for knowledge and the constraints of her era. It was also a subtle challenge, a final act of defiance against the pressures that sought to extinguish her intellectual flame. The life of Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz is a powerful reminder that history is not merely a sequence of events, but stories of people, with all their aspirations, struggles, and the legacies they leave behind. So what do you think about the life and works of Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. We always look forward to insightful opinions and intellectual debates from our MRQ audience. Thank you for watching.